Everybody, you guys got me? Awesome. Thanks for joining us. I know we got some of you guys are probably double dipping basketball, I understand. And I talked to Brad, I think it was last night. He was telling me the whole schedule that those guys got. So I know you guys are covering that as well. Obviously, since the game, we been into a bye week. I've been, I think I hit five states in 2 days, doing some recruiting. Got back late last night. Was in the building this morning. Had a meeting with our guys. First time I've been able to address them since after the game. So coordinators had them yesterday to do film and work through that. We had a nice practice yesterday. It was really our twos, threes, kind of Devo guys. Today everybody practiced. Thought we had a good practice out there today. Beautiful day in the stadium. Tomorrow will be kind of a combo platter. It'll be a little bit of an introduction of Purdue with our coaches and where that is at, and then also some individual work and fundamental work with our entire roster. So and then Friday will be some time with Tank and his crew, kind of a normal bye week schedule for us, where we try to get our players with high volume of reps back and get to guys that are healthy, healed up, give our guys some break, and then get a lot of work with our twos, threes, and Devo guys. So um, really with that, health wise. I don't believe I've been able to share this. Ashton Hollins, I'm sure a lot of you didn't realize he wasn't at the game Thursday. He had basically during fall camp had a shoulder subluxation and at that time tried to rehab it, get it back to being healthy. Unfortunately, had some issues with it the last couple of weeks, so he is going to opt to have a surgery that will basically curtail him for the rest of this year because he's already had a redshirt year that allows us to file some paperwork and get him an additional year down the road. Can't do it until he's done eligibility wise, but that one's there. Otherwise, everybody else kind of came out of it pretty healthy. Had some guys banged up, some guys with some soreness that we can give them a rest during this week. Caleb Patterson actually was fully symptom free today. He'll be returning to practice here in the next 24, 48 hours. Probably won't practice him until Sunday. So should have him fully available for next week's game against Purdue and go forward from there. With that being said, I guess I'd open it up for questions. I know, this week just try to give our guys a moment to breathe. I think this world that we're in right now to have the game weeks be as pressed as we have been, and because we've been fairly decent, we've had a lot of media requests and a lot of outside things. I'm trying to calm down for them a little bit this week to have a week to breathe, and we'll jump into normal Operation Press availability next week. So with that, open up for questions.
Hey, Brett, what did you set out to accomplish in recruiting this week? And what is different when you're got the number in front of your name and you're 4-1?
Oh, um, Jeremy, to be honest, it's kind of standard usual for us. It was kind of interesting. I was on a practice field where, you guys can do the math, but I reached out to a certain player that I remember going during a bye week my first year here and watching them perform at a practice. Made an offer to Isaiah Adams, and I called him when I was at that facility, walking on the field, and he's at home in Phoenix after a day of practice, and Coach Miller and I were together, and just kind of had that moment. And I actually called another player of mine from my past that played for me at another institution. I was at his practice facility and kind of just had one of those moments. You love the stories, the journeys. We had the Big Ten Network is I can say that right is doing a story on Pat Bryant, kind of a feature, right? So today I had a moment where I was interviewed with them and literally got emotional for a minute because I think as many times as we enjoy and celebrate the wins, for a guy that's been doing it, 16 years a head coach, over 30 years in this business, it's those individual journeys that make my job like different than anything I could ever imagine. And to live those moments with those kids, it's pretty awesome because it goes beyond just the winning and losing.
And do you delay game prep for Purdue's offense at all with a change there? And how important is it that you get a game of film to see
Yeah,
what they kind of do?
great point. I was notified, I believe sometime Sunday. I think Brett hit me up that there was going to be transition, and obviously that was going to affect our game plan, dramatically. In a way, there's probably a hidden blessing in the fact that it happened this week rather than next week. the guy that's taken over the play calling, is a very accomplished coach. Maybe not in the college world, but at his high school, Ben Davis, and all that goes into it. I do think you never know what goes on, but reading and hearing Ryan's basically thought process. Of course, I'm a head coach. I know you're not always telling exactly everything you wanted to know, but to not interrupt the flow of their staff, I get that part of it, right? So it'll be interesting. I know they got a lot to process through. We fortunately can get a little bit of a jump, offense, defense, special teams, offensively. Even though the caller may change, the personnel probably isn't going to change all that much. It'll be some adaptation, but yeah, it'll be a good thing that I know we'll all be tuned into Saturday for sure.
Thanks, Brett.
Coach, after 5 games, how much are you looking back to see what you did right and wrong with the first 5 games as a staff? Is there time to do that now, or do you have to wait to do that later?
Yeah, Bob, I specifically, I kind of had made our schedule coming out of Penn State, about Wednesday, Thursday of last week. I knew it would be affected a little bit by the result, right? But and really kind of how healthy we were. But I had purposely not scheduled any of my coordinators to be on the road this week until Friday, just because I wanted them to be in the building. When this schedule first came out, when it was 5 weeks bye week, 4 weeks bye week 3, I knew those were going to be nice little snippets of self scouts. And in today's world, we do it after every game. But I think to have 5 games, to have 3 ranked opponents, to have 2 Big Ten games behind us, plus the Kansas game, to truly feel what we are and what we are, who we are. Yeah, absolutely. Been a lot of self scout through the first 5, and then really process it today. I'll get done with our phone call today or our Zoom, and my staff and I'll be able to be together for the first time to kind of go through some of those things in preparation for tomorrow. I got a busy day and night tonight as well as tomorrow, and then I'll actually go out on the road Thursday, Friday, and do some more recruiting. So it's a little bit of a combo platter for everybody.
One more thing real quick. I know you like to be 5-0, but it's 4-1. If you look at it overall, you're like, okay, well, that's, how you feel about 4-1?
Well, it's better than 1-4 for sure. But I would say, I think you guys know that I get it. You think it's coach speak, but we try to go 1-0 every week. And I think that part is there. I think as a head coach, I realized, well, listen, when I went into all those schools, I was in several places, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and there was an overwhelmingly positive feedback, from a junior college in Kansas and Texas and Iowa to a high school in Illinois, like just everybody coming. I mean, even just in hotels, people at the practices or the facilities where you're at that are coming up to you. Had a groundskeeper in Council Bluffs, Iowa, blowing leaves around, came over and recognized me back from my Iowa days and talked about the excitement to see Illinois where it is. So yeah, there's a lot of positives that you can't put a price tag on it. Like from a recruiting standpoint, the day in the life of I was on a NCAA Zoom call because I'm on one of these committees that during a normal week I wouldn't be able to do, but because we had a bye week, I was, sitting in a little dungeon for 2.5 hours on a Zoom call. And even the people on that Zoom call or other colleges, they're very complimentary about what they've seen. So it's been a lot of positives for sure.
Thanks, Coach. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Brett, you kind of mentioned it after the game at Penn State, but can you detail, how critical it might be this bye week practice or these next couple of practices for the, your Devo guys and the guys that haven't had a whole lot of time comparatively to the guys that have had high reps through 5 games?
Yeah, Matt, to be honest, kind of 2 different worlds, right? So the Devo guys are always, that's how we're wired. I think that program will always be that way. And it's an easier way, like literally half the reps today went to those guys, but the other half went to the 2s, right? So those guys that are literally, today I saw Malik Elzy, Kapka Jones, Donovan Leary on the offensive line, Brandon Henderson, TJ McMillan, several tight ends on the defensive side to see some of those young defensive linemen, outside linebackers, DBs. Mac Resetich had a couple really big plays today. Sabor Kareem had a couple really nice things. Malachi Hood made 2 unbelievable plays right in front of me. So I think the value of those reps, I told them all after practice, listen, there's some of you guys that are sitting here right now that we may need you, in the second quarter against Purdue. We may need you in the 2-minute mark against Purdue. We may need you 2 weeks from now. We may not need you till the second to last week of the game of the season. But when that moment comes, we got to be ready, and that's been really big.
When you talk about self-evaluation, like according to Bob's question, do you get together with your coordinators and kind of go, hey, if you were to play Illinois, how would you beat them? Like, how
Yeah.
is that part of the conversation?
Oh, that's weekly. But I think Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I took all of the film from the first 5 games. So anytime you watch it, and then also because we have a bye week, you can't normally do this during a season, but you view the game so much differently. Saturday night flying home, that's one thing, right? Sunday to view it again is another thing. But then I watched it Monday and Tuesday of Penn State, and you just when you don't become so emotionally tied to it, right? Like I literally couldn't sleep, eat, or digest what was happening on Saturday after the game, and then Sunday, maybe less than a little bit, but I just got all worked up again, and then Monday. So like, there's definitely an advantage to the days removed, and then I think without a doubt, right now we probably offensively, defensive, and special teams should have as good an understanding of who we are as at any other point, right? And we've been, fairly, you know, fairly healthy, right? I mean, obviously, Cole Rusk has been eliminated, but that would happen early on, right? Unfortunately, it was a really tough conversation for Ashton Hollins, like probably one of my favorite kids to be around, but now he's kind of removed, but that opens up the door for somebody else. So, yeah, there's a little bit of everything going on, coach to coach, coordinator to a head coach, coordinator to his assistant coaches, coaches to their players. There's many different levels going on right now.
Thanks, Brett. Be safe.
Yeah.
Hey, Brett, Tom Canavan with the AP. How are you?
Good, Tom. How are you?
Good. I'm doing kind of one of those off-week pieces. If you look around the Big Ten, the vast majority of starting quarterbacks are transfers. I think you can count on one hand the guys who have been recruited and started. Why is having your quarterback so important these days?
Well, I think the definition of that in itself it's changed, right? There was a point in time where you didn't have any other choice other than to recruit, high school, develop, and plug in as people transitioned out, right? So my first ever transfer quarterback was a guy by the name of Russell Wilson, which was really the first ever grad transfer time that happened, right? So the reason that came about is I had another quarterback, John Budmeyer, who's now the wide receiver coach at the University of Iowa, was the highest recruited quarterback I had ever signed. And unfortunately, because of health issues, his immune system attacked his nervous system in this crazy sequence of events. And the only reason I went after Russell is he was no longer able to function as a quarterback. And our second string quarterback, who should have been taking over the role, tore his ACL. And our next quarterback was a redshirt freshman who had never been on campus for fall camp. So there was a lot of dynamics that went into that. And now the reason we went and got Russell was because of the need, and it was legal, right? And then a crazy story. Then Danny O'Brien, who's now the quarterback coach for Penn State, I signed him the year after Russell because we still didn't have John return, and we needed to have a transfer quarterback bring us depth. So now Danny came in, and now he's a quarterback coach at Penn State, who I saw before the game Saturday. Just crazy, right? So I think it's just more of a natural need. When I got here, they had transfer quarterbacks. I obviously went out and recruited Art, and then because of that situation, led us to Tommy DeVito. I wasn't going to sign another transfer quarterback, but when the NCAA said Tommy DeVito couldn't get another year, that's when I went out and went after Luke. I'm very excited last spring to keep Donovan Leary because I think he's going to be an incredibly good quarterback, and he would be the first one that could potentially come from within in our program. And I'm excited to see that. Trey Petty had a really good day today out of practice, another young man we recruited out of Starkville. So I think the definition of what we think is normal is now gone. The new normal is to be able to get a quarterback that you need to play right now.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, Brett, I mean, you just mentioned, with the 2 bye weeks, how it set up the season kind of nicely. And most years you either have to have a week 0 game. This year I think it's just the schedule that got you to. Would you like to see like 2 bye weeks just built into the schedule every year, regardless of how the calendar flows?
Yeah, to be fully transparent, ever since I've become a head coach, I've always tried to get to. It's just the way it kind of has always worked out. Even when I was going back to my early years at Wisconsin, we always try to play an early game to try and get a double bye week. I just think it allows. We've done fairly well out of bye weeks. I think the style of play we play to allow your body to have a little bit of recovery twice during the year is very essential if possible. It's not a absolute must have, but it's definitely one I like. And I literally brought that up to administration my first week on the job here to try and enable that whenever we can. So you're right. This year it was naturally built in for every team, but in the years forward, and then even my first year, the reason we did week 0 Nebraska was to get that extra bye week, as well as my second year.
I guess sort of a follow-up to what Jeremy asked recruiting wise, but you mentioned after the Kansas game that you were hearing from a bunch of people and maybe some that hadn't, maybe been as interested before that. Did you see that in person then, when you got out, just that there's maybe a little more interest?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult now, Scott, just because like we can't have face to face with the players, but the coaches for sure. Just general people. I was in Illinois yesterday, and I mean, even we're at we had an hour to kill, so we stopped at a food establishment, Subway, right? And like 4 people came up to us when they saw who we were and what we were, right? Like just all kinds of little things like that. But overwhelmingly, conversations. We have a nice 4-game stretch here where 3 of the 4 are at home. So official visits, unofficial visits, people coming for the game, kids coming for games that were committed to other places. Yeah, it's very, very apparent, what the buzz has been about us. And I know our players and as coaches, we didn't take any consolation prizes in Saturday night, but a lot of people were very complimentary about, being in the position we're in and where we're at. But it's definitely from the outside world coming in. It's very apparent. And then the other thing that I would say, and I know you guys cover it, especially some of you in full detail, we still don't have clarity on what our rosters are going to be. I think we know, right? It's supposed to be 105, and you can have scholarships up to 105, and wherever we end up being as administration, I'm literally in conversation with Josh and Roger, but we had kind of orchestrated a signing class where we thought we were going to be at 85, and then was beginning to make some procedural plans if we were going to go above that number and how that was affected, plus projected portal transfers for us. The month of December, a lot of you guys follow this, no longer in the month of December can we go out at all. So all of December recruiting will be on our campus, which presents a very unusual dynamic that has never been seen before, because the signing date is on that first Wednesday in December. Like I just keep pushing all the NCAA people, like, listen, we got to know the answers to these questions, man. Like, and they got to come sooner than you can ever imagine. And then just full transparency, we're working with a 120-man roster right now. Of course, we're going to lose X number of players to graduation and eligibility, but like, what players are going to need to be moved on from, right? Or look into other options, just because we physically may not be able to have that same number going forward. And then when that number becomes effective, is still not decided, right? Is it first day of classes? Is it first game? When is it? There's just a lot of moving parts that for us, as our job as head coaches, it's at an unprecedented level of gray. Like, I mean, I'm a guy that loves gray, but man, this is insanity right now.
Thank you.
Hey, Bret, given the value of a couple days to rewatch and to digest Saturday's game, what's the biggest thing that stood out to you, or the biggest things that stood out to you?
Well, I told our kids after the game, and then I told the guys that were in the building with us today, because they weren't in the locker room. On my flight over to Penn State, there was no doubt in my mind that we had prepared extremely hard. We had, put, in my opinion, everything into the preparation and the opportunity. I told them I thought we had a really good football team headed to State College, and returning, I feel the same way. I actually read to them some comments from Penn State's players and coaches about the respect they had for what we had, right? And I mean, they, basically put ourselves in a position to start off with a opening drive to go up for a touchdown at the end of the first half. Could be in a really good scenario, but it didn't play out the way that we had hoped, and because of that, we had a setback. And the biggest thing we had to do is we had to learn, and then we had to leave it, right? And there was a lot of positives, but there are a lot of things we needed to learn. We couldn't let those moments fall on deaf ears. Offensively, defense, special teams, there were definitely enough things that caused us to fail. Now, Penn State did a really good job in certain regards that give kudos to them, but we did enough things, self-inflicted offense, defense, special teams that whether it be the first time we were watching it after the game to the third time on Monday and Tuesday, we have to learn from those mistakes. To go on the road, play a ranked team in a hostile environment, you can't end up in a moment we were offense, defense, and come away with the answers we provided. That can't happen for us to have success when that moment comes again.
And then just I've been kind of meaning to ask, Daniel Brown hasn't been playing. He's been on the injury report, I guess. Do you have like a timeline for what that looks like for him?
Yeah, I was actually in Hutch. His coaches were asking about him, quite a bit, and like he unfortunately kind of had a lingering back issue. Did a lot of proactive things, tried to kind of bring it along, and then at some point, I believe in week 2, we just decided to kind of shut it down, mobilize him, and he's actually beginning to work a little bit last week, and we didn't get him in practices this week, but the hope is to get him involved in practice next week. And then we got a 7-window a season where we can kind of at least play him in 4 and kind of see how it's going, even if it's got to maybe play a week or 2 and then sit one out, right? I really am pushing the NCAA hard on, we just need to make everybody have 5 years of eligibility, right? Like, you can say whatever you want, but like some of these issues that are popping up around redshirt, and these uncomfortable moments. You saw one come to light last week on a national scale, a couple others that were kind of off the radar that were really, yes, they were around certain issues, but the catalyst was the whole 4-game redshirt thing, right? Like and there's been enough talk now. I've been hearing about this since 2006 when I became head coach, of ensuring 5 years of eligibility. I just don't think it does anything but promote health and well-being within our sport, and it allows us to avoid potential negative scenarios, which we kind of saw over the last couple of weeks.
Appreciate it, Brett. Thanks.
Yep.
Hi, Coach. With the early signing period coming up here just in a couple of months, when you're sending these coaches out on the recruiting trail, is the focus more on shoring up, the current class, the class of 25, or is it, building relationships for future classes, or maybe a little bit of both?
It's 3, Doug. It's 3. It's honestly, it's about, a lot of times, like I just said, I was in schools where we have kids on our current roster, and the best way to ensure being helped in moments in the future at those type of programs is to continue to build relationships with the coaches that are there over our current roster. And then we have guys that most immediately, like you're saying, are going to, sign with us or somebody in December of 2024 here, right? That project into our 2025 class. And then for where we are, we just do a lot of also forecasting for 2026 and 2027s. And believe it or not, 2028s, right? So we're that far out, right? And that's just the way the world is right now. To be honest, I have a code system that we had to use because we're working so many different classes. You got to make sure you're in the right class for the right type of contact. Like we can call 25s, we can only text 20. I'm sorry, we can call 25s, we can only text 26s, right? There's like all these rules that you got to make sure you're abiding by that can get a little bit overwhelming, but we really got all irons in the fire right now, every day, all day. And as far as sending coaches out right now, it's really kind of a little bit of both. If we're in the area for a 2025 commit or a 2025 top target, and there's a 2026 in the area, we'll kind of play that into it as we can.
Yeah, as you were talking about, the landscape has changed so much and the scholarship situation is kind of up in the air, but do you still like to leave some wiggle room for the spring and then for the transfer portal after the season?
Well, there's another case in point. Right now there's a proposal to not only, have it into a 1 portal season, right? Which means December would be the only window that it could be available. That's probably going to hopefully be decided here sooner than later, because if that goes into effect, it totally changes the scholarship count of where we're at. The other one that's an X factor right now, which has been an awesome thing, is, it no longer has to be your 10 accountable coaches out on the road. So I've removed a couple of my accountable coaches, my coordinator types, and put a couple guys on the road. Art Sikowski's been out on the road for us. Dre has been on the road for us. So there's some nuances there in the recruiting world that allow us to have those guys out on the road more, and kind of use their manpower hours a lot better than when we have coaches that are tied into game plans during the course of the fall. So that's kind of a fun time for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys. Have a great one, man.
Thanks, Brett.